Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf Yomi Avodah Zarah Daf Nun Aleph. We begin on Nun Amud Beis. It is 8 lines off the bottom of the Yomid. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, he quotes Amar Rab. So basically anything that a guy will set up as an idol is considered Avodah Zarah. Okay? Except if it's mechubar or mountain. Okay, but typically any item, any statue, any idol is considered an object of Avodah Zarah. Now, what form of service to that idol is considered worshipping an idol? So Rashi goes through a whole sort of a summary. He says like this: if the fellow is doing something which is done in the Beis Hamikdash, lahavdil, right, to Hashem, for instance, zvicha, shchita of an animal, right? The pasuk says zoveach. If one does that to Avodah Zarah, it's a no-no, right? Bilti la Hashem lavade. These things are meant to be exclusively for Hashem's sake in the Beis Hamikdash. So if he diverts that type of avodah, that type of service, that type of worship to Avodah Zarah, that is considered idol worship. And this is irrespective of whether or not this form of service is meant for this particular idol. Each type of idol expected a different type of service was expected for that idol, right? So even though this is not prescribed for this specific type of idol, nevertheless it's called Avodah Zarah. On the other hand, if one actually serves the idol in a manner which is typically done for this particular idol, so he's chayiv. It's Avodah Zarah, despite the fact that it's not done in the Beis Hamikdash. But if it's nor this nor that, this form of service is not meant for this idol, nor is it done in the Beis Hamikdash, it's not called Avodah Zarah. So that's sort of a quick overview of the upcoming sugya. And now we're going to find a case which is sort of in a gray area and try to determine its status. So let's say you have an Avodah Zarah, as Rashi explains it, Avodah Zarah, which is served using a stick. They take a stick and they wave it, a hockey stick or whatever, right? They wave it in front of the Avodah Zarah. Rashi calls it shemekashkashin l'fanei b'makel. They wave a stick to the Avodah Zarah. So that's the case we're talking about. Now, instead of waving that stick, which would certainly be considered Avodah Zarah with all its consequences, he didn't do that. He broke the stick, or he threw the stick. So what's the halacha there? Has he committed idol worship or not? A specific type of statue, an idol, which is usually served, worshipped with a stick, by waving it in front. Instead of waving it, shavar makil b'faneh, he broke it into 2 pieces. In front of the Avodah Zarah, in honor of the Avodah Zarah, chayav. He has committed Avodah Zarah. But zorak makil b'faneh potter. But if he merely tosses it, throws it, he's potter. What's the difference? Maishno shavar. Why is it that breaking constitutes Avodah Zarah? Because it's reminiscent of slaughtering, of shechting an animal, which is something done in the Beis Hamikdash. Right? You break into 2, you cut the neck off, you break the backbone, right? So breakage of a stick is considered like breaking of an animal, like zvicha, like shchita, and therefore he's chayav by doing it to this Avodah Zarah. Because, as Rashi explains, this material is appropriate for this Avodah Zarah, right? The stick is prescribed for this Avodah Zarah. So at least you have the material, proper material. So even though you're not really performing the proper act, but since you're doing an act which resembles avodah in the Beis Hamikdash, he's chayiv. And likewise, the item becomes asur. The broken stick becomes takroives Avodah Zarah. It's considered an offering to an idol. It's asur b'hana forever, right? Well, if that's the case, zorak nami. Even if he just threw it, havalekein zrika. That's also reminiscent to something in the Beis Hamikdash. It resembles zrika, splattering of the blood of the carbon on the mizbeach. Right? There's no breakage there, just throwing it. Amrli, he says no. When you sprinkle blood, that blood disperses. It sprinkles, right? It needs to be something which disperses, which breaks, which comes apart. So just throwing the stick to Avodah Zarah is not considered ke'ein zrika, but breakage of a stick is. Esvi has a kash. The Brisa says, Safas lo'tzah. He serves the idol this waste. He pours the liquid waste. So he pours out the container, the ovet of Miraglaim, to Avodah Zarah. In both cases, it's chayiv. Rashi says, even though this form of service was not really meant, wasn't really prescribed for this idol. I mean, Taisus adds that evidently this idol would expect this material, right? Meaning this material was typically served to the idol, but not in this manner. Okay, so he spilled it, he's still chayiv. Now, Bishlim Ovid Shel Memiraglaim, I certainly understand with the liquid waste, because Rika Mishtaberes. It certainly is considered Izrika, which comes apart because it's liquid which splatters. Elot Soya, but by the waste, the solid, my Izrika Mishtaberes Ika, how do you have breakage there? But Soya Lacha, speaking about liquefied waste. Okay, let me get that right. Perhaps Rab's Chidush, that even just breaking a stick is considered Avodah Zarah, perhaps is subject to Machlekes Tanoim, Shachad L'Chagav. You have a similar case. He takes a grasshopper, does shchita in front of the Avodah Zarah. And again, Tosfos explains, this Avodah Zarah was typically worshipped using a chagav, but not through shchita. So the material is on. It's the right stuff. But the form of worship is not what's expected to this Avodah Zarah. But since he did a shchita, which resembles the act of shchita of an animal in the Beis HaMikdash, therefore, he says it's chayiv for doing Avodah Zarah. V'chachamim, no, paitr, they say he is not considered doing Avodah Zarah. Maila, boka miflagi, it would appear that they are disagreeing about this very point. Whether breakage of a stick, a grasshopper, resembles shchita of the Beis HaMikdash. The Mar Savar Amrinan Kein Zvicha. Rabbi Yehuda considers this to be Ke'ein Zvicha, like an act of a Zvicha, which is done in the Beis HaMikdash. And when the Avodah Zarah is considered an act of Avodah Zarah, Umar Savar Le'amrinan Kein Zvicha. Whereas, Rabbanan say no, this doesn't resemble shchita. Who shechts a grasshopper? It's not required. It doesn't require shchita. It's not an act of shchita. Elokein pnim, unless you do something which is actually a matchup to the shchita in the Beis HaMikdash internally, i.e., on an animal. Otherwise, it's not considered. Loi, says the Gemara, no. Perhaps their discussion would not really connect to Rab's Chiddush. Perhaps nobody would agree to Rav that simply cracking an item to two, like a stick, it carries sufficient resemblance to an act of shchita in the Beis HaMikdash and constitutes Avodah Zarah. No, Elokein pnim be'inan. Certainly, it has to be more closely resembling of an act of shchita in the Beis HaMikdash. So breaking a stick doesn't suffice. So why is a grasshopper different? Vishani chagav. A grasshopper is very different than breaking a hockey stick. It has a neck which somewhat closely resembles the neck of a behemoth. No, so here you can suggest that cutting that neck does represent an act of shchita. Hence, Rabbi Yehuda considers it Avodah Zarah. But perhaps when it comes to breaking a stick, totally mismatch. Totally doesn't resemble shchita, and perhaps all would agree it doesn't work. But in any case, Rab did state it as a fact that even breakage of a stick is considered like zvicha, and is considered Avodah Zarah. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba Baravu, Amar Rav. So we always speak about, takrevis, right? Offerings, which are asa bahana. You can't even do bittul on takrevis. Now, what's called a takrevis? So let's go back to our halach. So again, this is Rab speaking. If this idol would be worshipped using a stick, waving the stick, right? Shavar makel b'fnei chayiv. He didn't wave it. He broke the stick. He's chayiv, as per Rav's opinion earlier. Here comes the added point of the next piece of Gemara. It's considered an act of worship to the extent that this item becomes takroivis. It's an offering, and it becomes asr b'hana. However, zorak makel lefanea, if he just throws the stick to the Avodah Zarah. And now Rashi explains, we're speaking about an Avodah Zarah where you throw sticks to it. Okay, a little different version of this Avodah Zarah. So although, yeah, it's called worshipping an idol, chayiv, but here's the punchline. Ve'eino ne'aseres, the stick does not turn into a takroivis. Why, says Rashi? Here's a rule. The loy have takroivis. Ela mididike ein pnim. The only time something is called takroivis is if it resembles the material, the format in which way they serve Hashem Kaviyach in the Beis Hamikdash. Right? So something that's considered a full-fledged act of worship still wouldn't affect the item that you're using during that act of worship. It's not called takroivis unless it closely resembles the carbon offerings in the Beis Hamikdash. So that's a new twist to the whole discussion, right? Amali Rav Nachman, I don't understand. Maishno shavar. Okay, so if he breaks it, then it's called takroivis. The havila kain zvicha because it resembles the shchita of the animal in the Beis Hamikdash. Zorak nami like kain zrika. Same question as we had before, right? Tossing the stick also resembles the splattering, the sprinkling of the dam, of the blood in the Beis Hamikdash. Amalei says no, it has to splatter and come apart. But we require zrika mishta beres, that the item being thrown breaks apart, comes apart. Veleka, in this case, you don't have it because the stick remains intact. Ela miyata, says the more according to this new concept that we just introduced. Then the only time you have takroivis is if the material being used to do the act of worship resembles in its material and its format something of the Beis Hamikdash. So what about the classic of Avodah Zarah, the markulis, right? That stone arrangement where they would stone it with more stones. Why would those stones become asr? I mean, you're throwing the stone, fine. You're doing an act of worship, so you are liable. The person, the gaver, the person committed Avodah Zarah, but the cheftza, the item, the object that's being used, the stone itself, unless it breaks into pieces, as Taisus points out, but otherwise, presumably a stone stays one piece. It didn't come apart. He threw it, but it wasn't mishta beres. It shouldn't be considered takroivis. So why do we speak about stones around the markulas being a problem? Why not? What's the problem? It's not takroivis. Armalis, he says, good question, great question. I myself had that question. I was taken by that question. And I asked around. Who did I ask? Rabbi Baravua. He didn't have an answer. He went to the next Chacham. Rabbi Baravua asked the Chiyah Barav, and the Chiyah Barav went to Rav himself. Amalei, and he gave him the answer. You're right. The stone that's thrown does not turn into takroivis. That's not the basis for the isra of the stone. Because when he throws that stone to the markulis, he is basically connecting that stone to the markulis. The markulis now expands, gets enlarged, and it incorporates, it absorbs all the stones around it. So you're right, it's not takroivis. It becomes an inherent part of the actual idol itself, the actual Avodah Zarah. And of course, as we learned before, Avodah Zarah allows for bittul, right? That will be the difference between Avodah Zarah itself or takroivis. Ironically, takroivis, which is merely serving Avodah Zarah, is worse off than Avodah Zarah itself. You can't even battle it. So you're right, this stone being tossed to the markulis will not turn into takroivis. Rather, it becomes part of the original formation, it becomes part of the Avodah Zarah itself. Okay, that works according to the Shita we'll see later in the parak that holds that avodas kechavim, shleivet kechavim, an idol established by a goy, asur miyad, becomes asur immediately. As soon as he makes it, as soon as he manufactures it for Avodah Zarah, it's asur. That would explain the isur upon these stones added to the markulis. But according to the opinion that the idol of a goy only becomes asur when that idol is actually served, when it's pressed into service, so tishtri, so these stones, right? The stone tossed at the markulis, at this point, yeah, he established it as part of the idol, but it wasn't yet worshipped. That stone that he threw, nobody worshipped that stone. It should be mutter. Nobody, he didn't worship it. Amalei, he says, you're right. Kol achas va'achas. Nasas avodas kechavim. V'takrevis lachaverta. Yeah, as soon as he throws it, it is not yet asur. But the stone that follows it, kol achas va'achas, it's a subsequent system. The following stone, nasas avodas kechavim, becomes Avodah Zarah, becomes part of the arrangement, but also serves as an offering to the stone that was there before it. So yeah, you have an act of worship and an act of takrovis with respect to the stones that were there prior to the arrival of this last stone. According to this calculation, so the last stone wasn't yet worshipped by other stones, so it should still be permissible. He says, you're right. Amarle, he says, yeah, if you can identify it, zil shakla, gesundheit, take it. So anything but the last stone is asur because they were all worshipped by the stone that followed them. Ravashi says, look, I can solve your last stone riddle. Even that's asur. You know why? Every single stone that's added, nasas takrevis la'atzma, it serves two functions. First of all, first of all, it's being a takrevis l'chaverta, right? It's serving the other one, but it's also serving itself. Because it's different than just establishing an idol which has not yet been worshipped. Here, he's doing an act of worship with the stone, an act of offering to itself. So it's a simultaneous process. It turns into an idol, and also it's being served, it's being worshipped by throwing it, by the act of throwing. He has worshipped that stone itself. So that explains why all the stones surrounding the markulis are asur as takrevis tanan. Let's take a look at the Mishnah coming up on the second side of our daf. So he discovered ksus, garments, money, utensils sitting on top of the markulis. Enjoy it. Harelu mutar, and you can take them. Because they're not considered takrevis, they were just, put there for, But if he has materials which are typically, offered in the Beis Hamikdash, and we have indication that they're there as a form of service, as a takrevis to the Avodah Zarah. Parchili anavim, you have the clusters of grapes, v'atoris shel shibalim, crowns of arrangements, stalks of grain, v'yenos, wine, shmonim, slases, oils, flowers, v'chol davar shekayetze bay, and any item which typically karev l'gabei mizbech, is served in the mizbech of Hashem. Asur, find it on Avodah Zarah, you assume that it's takrevis, it's an offering to Avodah Zarah, it's asur. Now, we have to clarify. We have to figure out how these items correspond to offerings of the Beis Hamikdash, which, as we learned, is a prerequisite in order for these to be considered takrevis, right? So let's break it down, case item by item. Wine, oil, etc. Yeah, these things are typically served in Beis Hamikdash, and when they're offered, they're thrown, they break apart, they correspond to the format of the avodah. But those solids, clusters of grapes, etc., nobody serves grapes or grains in the Beis Hamikdash, nor is it coming apart. It's staying as a single entity. Amar Rava Amar Ula. What happened was, this fellow picked it off the vine, or in the case of the grain, he harvested it off the ground as an act of worship to the idol. So he did an act of breakage as part of his offering. And the Farshim explain, furthermore, the grapes are brought as bikurim, etc. So, in any case, there was an act of breakage. So that's like the That's like the act of zvicha, right? It's like a shchita. In which case, it's considered an act of takroivis and becomes asr. Some Mepharshim point out that it appears that even though he didn't have the Avodah Zarah in front of him, he went to the vineyard, picked a grape for the sake of the Avodah Zarah, to consider that an act of worship. It's enough to be considered takroivis because he had the Avodah Zarah in mind when he was doing that. This is based on Taisus and Chul and Daf Mem, who says that even if it's not the fun of it, you're not directly in the presence of the Avodah Zarah, the act of worship is still considered as such. Amar of Amar V'Yechna. Okay, let's just recap this piece. Until now, we had Rav telling us that for something to be considered takroivis, the act of takroivis has to resemble in some way what's done in the Beis Hamikdash, like breaking a stick, to the Avodah Zarah, like harvesting the grapes, but tossing a stone, merely tossing a stone which stays intact, which doesn't break apart, that's not shchita, that's not zrika. Why is it considered forbidden material? So the Gemara answered, you're right. Technically, it's not called takroivis. It's called part of the actual Avodah Zarah. It becomes incorporated, absorbed into the actual makulis, and therefore it's asur. Now, although the Gemara did use a lashon takroivis with respect to those stones, but the Mepharshim explained it cannot be that we're speaking about, the status of takroivis, because we just concluded that unless it breaks apart, unless it's not considered takroivis, the Gemara just means that it was an act of worship. He's offering the stone to the other stone or to itself, however we learned, but that's just in order for it to be considered Avodah Zarah that was worshipped. But it's not going to have the status of takroivis with respect to, whatever takroivis has. It can't be mavatal, etc. Of course, that wouldn't apply unless it's ke'in pnim. It resembles an act of service of the Beis Hamikdash. Okay, that takes us to the next Gemara. What about if one slaughters an animal to any Avodah Zarah, which is typically not worshipped with animals? He is chayav, and the animal becomes takroivis. This is in line with the Rashi that we discussed earlier, because if it's something which is actually done in the Beis Hamikdash and now diverted to Avodah Zarah, of course it's considered. But says the Gemara, Amar Rabavo, Amar V'Yechanan, Menayin l'zavech beima balasmum. What about the animal is blemished and unfit for service in the Beis Hamikdash, and he now slaughters it to in honor of Avodah Zarah, which typically is not served using animals. So it's not prescribed for this idol, nor is it a form of service that's being sort of diverted from the Beis Hamikdash, because it's not even an animal that could be taken to the Beis Hamikdash for hakrava. Shenamar zavech lo elem yachram. Right? Don't do zvicha to the animal, to the Avodah Zarah. Bilti only l'Hashem levad, only to Hashem. So it's sort of a flip side, right? Only something which can be offered to Hashem and now offered to Avodah Zarah carries this consequence. Like Asra Torah only forbade Ela kein pnim, an animal that could be offered inside, as opposed to a blemished animal. Havi bar Rav. Rav had a question. B'mai, how seriously blemished is this animal? Is it just a slight blemish? That wouldn't really get in the way of a guy bringing the right. Something in the eye, a cataract. Well, hashtel v'nei noyach chazia. Look, a guy who's called b'nei noyach chazia l'gavoya. You can even bring it in honor of Hashem. B'bama did too, and there are altars, right? A guy can bring a carbon to Hashem, even if it's slightly blemished, because they don't have to adhere to our higher standards and have a fully complete unblemished animal. So even this slightly blemished animal is still fit for hakrava to Hashem if a guy chooses to do so. Goes without saying that if he brings this very animal that he couldn't bring to Hashem to Avodah Zarah, of course he's chayiv. Ella rather was speaking that it's more seriously blemished. It's missing a finger, it's missing a limb, which disallows it from being brought as a carbon. Even a guy can't bring it to Hashem. How do we know that this type of seriously blemished, incomplete animal, even a Ben Noach can't bring it? This was by the Teva. Hashem instructed him to collect, the animals. Mikol achai, full, unblemished animal, with all their limbs intact, right? Mikol basar, shnai mikol, 2 of each type. Amra Torah is telling him, Have behema, because the Torah knew. Rashi says, Golo v'yodua, lefanav, Hashem knew good and well that he's going to bring karbanis after the mamul. Hence, all these requirements and all these specifications, right? Amra Torah is telling him, make sure to bring animals that are fit for carbon, because you're going to be using them for carbon. Have behema, bring only animals shechayin. Chayin means they're intact. Rashi, Ivar, and Shala, all the tips of the limbs, all the fingers, everything should be in place. Okay, so we see that otherwise it's unfit. And likewise, if a guy should bring it to Avodah Zarah as an offering, he is patur. Okay, we're just going to sort of give and take a little bit with the psukim, but the point was made. The message was conveyed. We understand Rabbi Yechanan's halacha now, that if it's a seriously blemished animal and it's brought to Avodah Zarah, he's patur, because it's unfit for gavaya, for heavenly use. Says the Gemara, hold it. Who says that if it's missing a finger, it's unfit? Hai umikol achai. This pasuk mikol achai, which was your source to preempt any blemished animals, miboyle umute treifa. Perhaps it's not coming for this purpose. It's coming to exclude an animal who's a treifa, a serious, internal wound, a critical wound. Perhaps only that's preempted. No, that's learned from a different pasuk. That's learned from the other pasuk, that the animals have to have the ability to have offspring, which a treifa can't do. So it rules out the treifa, leaving us with the pasuk of mikol achai available to rule out a missing finger. Okay, that works if you say a treifa can't bear any offspring. But if a treifa can bear offspring, Michael Meimar. So the words Melach Zera isn't coming necessarily to exclude a treifa, because a treifa could have offspring. So perhaps Mikol Achai is coming to rule out a treifa, but perhaps missing a limb is still okay. Amakra, says the Gemara, we have another pasuk to exclude a treifa. Itcha, the pasuk says, bring them with you. Itcha. Itcha means b'day melach, similar to you. And we assume Noach was a healthy man, not a treifa. So that automatically excludes any treifa. Why? Who says maybe Noach himself was a treifa? So Itcha would not be excluding a treifa. And therefore, Mikol Achai is needed for that, and unavailable to exclude a missing limb. Well, you can't say he was a treifa, tamim. The Torah calls him a tamim, ksiv bey, right? Indicating that he was healthy, unblemished. Well, maybe it means in character, in midos, but perhaps bodily he was missing. Dilma tamim midracha. Well, that's already covered by the other title. Tzaddik ksiv bey says tzaddik, righteous, with respect to his personality. Well, Dilma, perhaps there are two aspects of personality. One is his righteous deeds, one is his pristine personality. Dilma tamim bedracha. Perhaps Daman is reflective of his humble, good-naturedness. But tzaddik means b'masav in his deeds. Loimat says, Amr says the Gemara, you can't suggest that he was a treifa, because otherwise, if you're going to suggest that Noach treifa hava, in fact he was a treifa, so you mean the pasuk is saying, Amalei Rachman, Torah is telling him, the kavasach ayil, itcha means you can only pick treifas like you, shleimin loisah, don't collect healthy animals? Unlikely. So chances are, presumably, he was a healthy man. And likewise, the animals are itcha, similar to him, have to be healthy. That excludes the treifa, leaving us with mikol achai to rule out missing limbs. So now that we've concluded that a treifa is excluded from itcha, why does the pasuk have to say la'achir zera? The answer is imi itcha. If only from the word itcha, I would say Okay, let's have sabam. They have to be healthy, but perhaps they can be, past childbearing age, the animals, just to keep them company. I feel a zaken, I feel a saris, even if it's an old animal who can't bear any offspring, I feel a saris or is sterilized. Perhaps they're acceptable. Comes the words lachizera to tell you, no, noyach, ensure that the animals that you collect are of the childbearing age so that it will promote their species. Continues the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Elazar, Minayin l'sheichet behemel markulis ru chayiv. So this ties into the previous discussion. You take an animal, you do a shechita in honor of the markulis. Markulis typically is not worshipped using animals, right? It's stoned. He's still chayiv. Why? Again, this ties into our discussion of earlier that anything that's diverted from the Beis HaMikdash to the Avodah Zarah, even though the Avodah Zarah is not expecting it, so to speak, it's something totally out of character, you're chayiv. And that's learned from this pasuk. Shnamar, the pasuk says, ensure that you don't shecht your animals to the seirim, to the Avodah Zarahs. Even if it's not the type of work, the type of service prescribed for the Avodah Zarah that you're attending to. If it's not really needed, this pasuk is not coming to describe the type of service meant for the Avodah Zarah on hand. For that we have another pasuk. Right? What are they doing? Worshipping their idols. I want us to do. Torah says no, don't do it. Right? That's speaking about the type of service which is meant for that type of Avodah Zarah. So that's covered in that pasuk. So this new pasuk, we're going to apply it for an example of l'shaloi kedarka, where he did it even though it wasn't meant for the Avodah Zarah. He's chayav, he committed idol worship because this very act is typically done in the Beis HaMikdash. Asks the Gemara, hold it, this pasuk that you're quoting, using as a source, is coming for this purpose. It's needed for something else entirely different. Look at this sign, it's needed for the other brisa, where the Torah is warning against taking a real korban that was, meant for the Beis HaMikdash, and bringing it, middle of nowhere. It's not speaking about Avodah Zarah, as the Brisa explains. Ad kan. So the psukim up until this point, Medaber is discussing a case where he took bekachim sheikdishan. He took a korban which was made into a hekdesh, was designated as a korban, when you were not allowed to bring a korban in a private bama, in a private mizbeach. It was during when the Mishkan was already standing, b'shas isur habamas, when the bamas, these private altars, were off limits. So this korban was designated, was intended for the mizbeach in the Mishkan, and in fact, he took that korban, diverted it, b'shas isur habamas, took it onto his private altar when the bamas were off limits. So basically, a sort of a double violation, because he was makriv at a time where he shouldn't be doing it in a bama, and it was actually a korban which was meant for the mizbeach in the Mishkan. That's the most severe of all. Sharei anshin amor. So the pasuk has already presented the punishment for this type of activity. Shenemar, it says the punishment is kares, right? Vel pesach oil moed le'iviyoi. So if you fail to bring it to the oil moed, Einish Shamanot, consequence is kares. So you know that from this pasuk. As hora menayim, what about a warning? Every punishment requires a warning. We have another pasuk, Tamalaymer pen ta'ala elisecha. Don't, right? Pen, lest you bring your karbanos in the wrong location. Where do we find that to be an ashara? Because the word pen means do not, right? Ukad Rab Avin, Amar Rab Ila, the Amar Rab Avin, Amar Rab Ila, Kalmakim, Shenamar, wherever we find one of these three expressions, either he's shamer, upen, or va'al, einoi elab loisasei, it's a loisasei. So that's up until this point in the psukim. It was a korban meant for the Mishkan, he took it outside, bad news. Mekan ve'elach. Going forward in the psukim, it sort of drops a level. It's speaking about shechut echutz, a korban which was brought outside, but in a more mitigated fashion. Going forward, the pasuk will speak about B'kachem sheikdishim shas heterabos. Oh, this time it was a carbon, which was made to hegdish when it was still permissible to bring karbanos outside. It was before the Mishkan was erected. So the carbon wasn't really meant for the Mishkan. But now, by the time he got around to it, it was too late. The Mishkan was already built. So he took that original carbon and took it to his local Mizbeach. And he was makrivit elsewhere, outside the Mishkan, when it was forbidden to do so. So that's also considered shechut ichutz of a lesser level. Shenemar, the pasuk speaks about this case as well. Laman asher yaviu b'nei Yisrael ezivchem asher mzoichim. So they're bringing their karbonis outside, and we're speaking about zvachim shahitarti l'chakvar. So although this particular carbon was really initially meant for outside, but now it's too late, and al pnei asada, if he brings it, it's like al pnei asada, which means malamed, we learn shekol zavech b'bama. If one brings his carbon in a bama, kilu zavech al pnei asada, it's as if he's offering to the sada, to the to the Avodah Zarah. And the pasuk stresses v'aviyim l'Hashem, make sure to bring it to the Beis Hamikdash, to mitzvah ased. It's a positive commandment. Mitzvah what about a negative commandment against doing so? Be careful not to do it outside, which is the same exact pasuk that we cited on Amud Aleph as the source for a behemoth that was brought to the Markulis, and it's considered an act of idol worship based on this pasuk. And here we're applying this same pasuk for a totally different transgression. Shechut echutz, where he took a carbon and brought it outside the mikdash, right? In any case, let's just conclude this conversation. Perhaps this lesser degree would also generate kares. The pasuk concludes this is a system which will apply lahem. Zois means zois lahem. Only this. It's a mitigated violation. It's an asay. It's a leis asay. But the other consequence, meaning to consider it a kares violation, no, that doesn't apply in this case. But bottom line is, the pasuk has already been applied for this halacha. How can it be used for Avodah Zarah purposes as well? Amarava, both are learned from the same pasuk. Kribe v'lo yizbechu ukribe v'lo oid. Because the word oid, v'lo yizbechu oid, the word oid is extra. That allows us to take the word v'lo, they should not yizbechu, they should not slaughter. V'lo is also connected to the word oid, and no more. Meaning they should no longer bring karbonis outside them. So one is for shechut echutz, and one is for the first halacha regarding Avodah Zarah. A behema presented and served to the Markulis is considered Oved Avodah Zarah, despite the fact that Markulis is meant to be stoned. But since this is an act of worship, an act of avodah in the Beis Hamikdash, it constitutes Avodah Zarah if done to the Avodah Zarah. Continues the Mishnah. Matzah b'roish. This is the Mishnah that we quoted earlier. Matzah b'roish mois kusay kelim. He discovers garments, he discovers money, things, utensils on the Markulis. Hara ilu mutaran. You can take them gesundheit. They're not considered takroives, not considered Avodah Zarah. So they're not beautifying the Avodah Zarah. They're not serving the Avodah Zarah. They're just been placed there just because, right? So they're not considered part of the Avodah Zarah entity. But if he has takroives material, stuff which is typically served, lahavdal Beis Hamikdash, lahavdal by the Avodah Zarahs, or things which are meant to beautify the Avodah Zarah, as we're going to see in the Gemara. Clusters of grapes, right? The stalks of, right? Wines, etc. Typically brought on the Mizbech, Asr, they are Asr. How do we know these items are Asr? We have two psukim. One pasuk speaks about things which are accompanying the Avodah Zarah. But here she could say, so you'll see their despicable idols. Ve'eskiduleim, eights, ve'even, right? Sticks, stones, kesef, v'zav hashemayim, gold and silver, lying with the Avodah Zarah. So anything that's sort of accompanying the Avodah Zarah becomes incorporated, is considered, whether it's takroivis, whether it's considered, an item which is meant to beautify, an accessory to the Yetzer Hara, to the Avodah Zarah, same thing. So here the pasuk provides an extensive list, not only gold and silver, which are deemed, valuable, and adornments. We have even eitz ve'evan, wood, stones. And the other pasuk speaks about items found on top of the Avodah Zarah. Lo sachmaid, kesef v'zav aleim. Don't crave the gold and silver found on the Avodah Zarah. Here it's a more limited list, just gold and silver. How do you reconcile the two psukim? We compare the two. Imayim dumid aleim. So the first pasuk, with the longer list of items found next to the Avodah Zarah, must be compared to the second pasuk, describing the gold and silver on the Avodah Zarah, which means ma'aleim, just like in the second pasuk, davar shel noi aser. It specifies only things which beautify, which are considered adornments. They're aser. But she'eno shel noi mutter. Otherwise, if it's not adorning, it's mutter, right? Because gold and silver represents adornments. Af imoim, likewise, in the first pasuk, you should find things which accompany which are lying next to the Avodah Zarah. Davar shel noi aser, only something which adorns and beautifies is aser, v'she'eno shel noi mutter. Otherwise, it's mutter. So basically, we're sort of matching up the two psukim. There's no difference really. One pasuk is sort of revealing and indicating what is considered an accessory, what is considered incorporated into Avodah Zarah, only if it beautifies. Well, perhaps we should go the other way around. Let's sort of interpret and apply the pasuk of aleim comparable to the pasuk of imayim, where we find a more extensive list of items. Anything, whether it beautifies or not, if it's found in the Avodah Zarah, it's considered part and parcel of the mayim kol shemayim. Just like the pasuk of imayim talks about all types of materials found next to it, even if it's not a noi item. Af aleim kol shaleim. Likewise, the second pasuk of aleim, although it only cites gold and silver, it really means everything as well. If that would be the case, if that was true, lo yomer aleim, why would the pasuk even have to speak about gold and silver found on the Avodah Zarah itself? Look, if stuff found next to it is asur, certainly if you found on top of it. Apparently the message here is that it has to conform to the items found in aleim, gold and silver, which beautify, otherwise it's not asur. Ask the Gemara. Okay, so how do we explain the items mentioned at the outset of our Mishnah? He found mois, ksus, oikelim. It's mutter. Why? Mois, davar shel noyu. You find money on the Avodah Zarah. No, it's certainly an adornment for the Avodah Zarah. So why is it mutter? Amrid v'Rav. So they answered, bikis, kosher. Yeah, if you would have found money spread out in a nice way, maybe. But here, it's his money bag, which he just parked onto the. he hung it off he slung it off his Avodah Zarah just as a hook. So that's not a very adorning and respectable way of doing it. And therefore, it's not considered an offering or a noy to Avodah Zarah, because it's his money bag kosher, tied up. His money bag tied up, v'tolib tzavarai, slung around the Avodah Zarah's neck. Ask the Gemara, what about the ksus, the garment? Davar shel noyu, perhaps it was offered as an adornment to Avodah Zarah. Davar shel noyu. Rabbi here as well was speaking that he used the Avodah Zarah as his coatry. B'ksus mekupelos u'b'nechas le'al roshai. He had his garment folded up, sitting on the on top of the head of the idol. So that's not a very. What about the kli, the utensil? Davar shel noyu. Perhaps it's an adornment. Amar Papa again. The schifel mashchilta. He took the pail and he overturned it areshe over the head of the Avodah Zarah, to hang it there, to dry it there, and therefore it's not considered. Amar Vasi Varchia. So how do we know what's what? Kol shulifnim and akilkalim. Any item found within the partition, they had the partition that would provide privacy around the idol. Anything found in there, afilu ma'im melech aser. That's what you offer. That's what you do takrevis. So even water or salt can be considered takrevis, and it's aser. Rashi says because that's brought to the Beis Hamikdash as well. So even if it's not something which technically provides adornment, but if it's an offering material, it's aser. However, chutz l'kilkin, if it's beyond the partition, so it's in close proximity, but it's beyond the partition, that's not what they do takrevis. So over there, perhaps it's an adornment. it adds to the ambience, and therefore davar shall noi, if in fact it provides noi asr. Okay, so if something that beautifies, good. She'ena shall noi mutter, but if it's just a block of wood, which doesn't constitute noi, it's mutter. We learn this as a fact. Ein kilkelin, the concept of differentiating within the partition and beyond the partition, that applies to all other idols except loy the pa'er, loy the markulis, except for the pa'er where they would tend to their needs in front of the Avodah Zarah, or the markulis which was stoned. There we don't differentiate between inside and outside. With respect to what? Lamai. Ilem dimin to say that afilu pnim kechutz dami v'shari, that we don't differentiate, meaning anything found even beyond, even within the partition, is treated like you found it outside, which means to say v'shari it's mutter, it's not considered takrevis. Says the Gemara. Why would you say that? Look, they tend to their needs, very base way of conduct and service. They do it to the Avodah Zarah. Certainly, you don't think they would offer water and salt? It's not worse than the this type of base activity, right? So why wouldn't you consider it takrevis? Ella, rather, he meant the other way around. He meant to be machmer. Since these types of very base forms of Avodah Zarah don't really require privacy, it's antithesis to the whole concept of privacy. You meant to express your basest needs and basest dimensions of Avodah Zarah. So there we say even something found outside the partition doesn't really play a role. It doesn't serve any function, any purpose. So therefore, even if you find the takrevis outside, the water, the salt, whatever outside it's still considered takrevis. That's why they decided to do the takrevis, because the partitions are not reckoned with when we're speaking about these super lowly types of idols. Interesting, I read an article talking about takrevis. I read an article, a first-hand story that a firm journalist, he observed when he visited Japan recently, a year or two ago. He came to this place, there was Avodah Zarah, this statue, and he sees this older couple, retired couple. They were walking up with great, reverence and honor, holding this tray of fruit, all types of fruits and beautiful arrangement, and they put it down before the idol, and they prayed and they walked away. And he was standing there watching, and he saw as soon as the couple left, so the attendant took advantage and he emptied the tray. So it served him well. It was he had a good meal. In any case, the next morning, this couple comes back to check on their offering, and lo and behold, it's totally cleaned off. The tray is there's no trace of their food. The idol actually took their offering, accepted their offering. They were ecstatic. They were jumping from joy. They were successful. And this Jewish journalist, this frum guy, was like, he couldn't believe his eyes. This is like a story from from thousands of years ago. You think in ancient times they would fall for these things. Today in modern day Japan, they still do these. In any case, the point of the Mishnah of the Gemara is that not every object found near the Avodah Zarah is considered noi or takrevis. Has to conform to certain parameters. It has to be something which either beautifies, now would be considered noi, or if it can be determined that it's used as takrevis, as being served at Avodah Zarah, then it would be asur as well. Says the Mishnah, avodas kechavim shoyla gina. This connects to that story with the Rav Gamliel, right? That he was bathing in the bathhouse that was on the auspices that was linked to the Avodah Zarah. So here goes the Mishnah. Avodas kechavim shoyla gina merchatz. Avodah Zarah owned this property, this facility, the garden or the bathhouse. Can one make use of these facilities? Sure. Neheneman, you can have an offer from it because Avodah Zarah is Avodah Zarah and the merchatz is a merchatz. This is not an actual, Avodah Zarah item. So you can have an offer from it. You can go use a merchatz as long as it's shaloi b'toiva. You're not reciprocating to Avodah Zarah. Rashi learns over here, it means to say he's not going to pay the Avodah Zarah, he's not going to pay a fee. Elsewhere, Rashi actually has a different pshat. He says, it means to say, you're not going to thank the Avodah Zarah, you're not going to give it honor, you're not going to give it respect. So, as long as you just use it and walk away, you're good. Ve'ein nen mehen b'toiva, but you can't use it if you're going to reciprocate. Let's say the facility is a jointly owned facility, jointly owned by the Avodah Zarah and non-Avodah Zarah owners. In this case, you're free to use the facility. You can use it whether or not you're going to pay for it, and the Gemara will explain what this means. Oh, we had this earlier. So if a guy makes an idol, it's asur right away. If it's a Jewish made idol, then it's only asur when he actually worships it. So when he makes it for his use, it's not going to activate the Isser unless he actually uses it. We'll see the sourcing in the Gemara. Amar Abaye. Okay, so we had two cases of this Beis HaMerchatz. The first case, it was owned exclusively by the Avodah Zarah, and the Mishnah says you can have a no as long as you don't reciprocate. And the second case is speaking, it was a partnership, it was jointly owned by the Avodah Zarah and others, and there the Mishnah says you can use it regardless. So Abaye now refers back to the first case. You can use it as long as it's b'shalei b'toiva. You're not reciprocating to who? Says Abaye, was speaking about the priests, the ones that represent the Avodah Zarah. Amar Abaye, you may not use it b'toiva, which means b'toiva has koimrin, if you're paying or thanking the priests. Rather, only shalei b'toiva, which means shalei b'toiva is koimrin. Make sure you don't respond to the priests. Lafuki, as opposed to toivas evdea. Suppose you want to, do a token payment to the attendants or to thank the other worshippers, as long as it doesn't represent the Avodah Zarah entity, the shari, that's allowed. Iko the masn la seif. Now there were others who applied Abaye's statement to the second case of the Mishnah, to the joint facility. Haya shalav shel acherim. In that case, you can use it regardless. Nehen ben, you can use the facility b'toiva or b'shalei b'toiva. On that, Abaye says, look, let me explain to you what's going on. It doesn't mean you can actually pay the priests or the Avodah Zarah. Amar Abaye, he's paying the other partners. B'toiva means b'toivas acherim. You can pay the others. And ignore the Avodah Zarah, that's okay. Shalei b'toiva, but you can't use it. And you can use it b'toiva and shalei b'toiva as well, because shalei b'toiva is krimen. It means to say he's not thanking the priests. As long as he steers clear of the Avodah Zarah, he's okay. Okay? So according to this version of Abaye, man the maslan seifa, the ones who applied Abaye's halacha to the second part of the Mishnah, the one that we just discussed, which says that even if it's a jointly owned facility, where the Avodah Zarah is not so, is not the, exclusive, owner, and is not the necessarily the prevailing, party and prevailing force. Still, you got to be careful. You want to use it, fine, but steer clear of anything related to Avodah Zarah. Man the masnei sefer kol sheken certainly. Associating, thanking, appreciating the Avodah Zarah itself would be us, or certainly in the Reisha where it was owned only by the Avodah Zarah. Okay, so if even a jointly owned facility poses a problem, certainly if it's exclusively owned by the Avodah Zarah. But uman the masnei Reisha. But according to the earlier version of Abaye, that he was going on the first case, it was a merchatz owned by Avodah Zarah only. Says Abaye, be careful. You can only use it shalei b'toiva. If you don't thank, if you don't express, if you don't pay, the kaimrin. But perhaps as aval seifa. But we can infer from there, we can suggest that in the second case, where it was owned by others as well, perhaps it's more lenient. Since there are others jointly owning the facility, so here even if he thanks the priests, they're not really the exclusive owners, and it's not really considered an acknowledgement of the Avodah Zarah. So in that case, afilu b'teves koimrin namish abridam, even if he pays the koimrin, the priest will be okay. He gives him like a token payment, but it's not really considered a full acknowledgement because they're not really the exclusive owners. So again, we have two cases in the Mishnah regarding a Beis HaMerchatz associated with Avodah Zarah, owned only by the Avodah Zarah or in partnership with others. We have Abaye who explains that when the Mishnah says, use it only shalei b'teiva, it means without thanking or paying the kaimrin, the priests. Some learn it's going even on the seifa, where it's a jointly owned facility. Be careful, steer clear from the anything related to Avodah Zarah. And that certainly would be a problem in the Reisha, the first case where Avodah Zarah was the sole owner. But according to the second version, the first version of Abaye, perhaps this is only an issue if the Avodah Zarah is the exclusive owner. But if it's a jointly owned facility, we can infer from Abaye that certainly would be okay, since he can, it can be deemed like that he's associating and really relating to the other owners. So although he'll do a token payment or express appreciation to the kaimrin, it's not considered a full acknowledgement of the Avodah Zarah. It's not according honor to Avodah Zarah. It'll be okay. Okay, so in summary, what constitutes an act of Avodah Zarah? So if it's something meant for this idol, it's certainly considered Avodah Zarah. If it's something which is done in the Beis HaMikdash, like taking an animal and doing shchita, if he does it to Avodah Zarah, it's certainly Avodah Zarah. What if it's taking some sort of material, like a stick, which is typically waved, right, to the Avodah Zarah? So the material is the right material, but he serves it differently than is typical. If he throws it, that's not called Avodah Zarah. If he cracks it, according to Rav, since that resembles an act of shchita, which is done internally in the Beis HaMikdash, that's considered an act of Avodah Zarah. It wasn't so simple. We had a back and forth on that. In any case, that was Rav's chiddush. Now, what about turning into takroivis Avodah Zarah? Does the item become an offering? So again, it has to conform to certain parameters. It has to be something that's ke'in pnim, something which resembles the service of the Beis HaMikdash. So like breaking something, like throwing it in a way which splatters, right? Such as those grapes which were, picked off the vine with the kavanah of Avodah Zarah. Now, we speak about shechting an animal to Avodah Zarah. So even though it's not, Avodah Zarah is not something, this particular Avodah Zarah is not something which is served in this way, but still it's chayav, but that's only if the animal was fit for a korban Beis HaMikdash, as opposed to a balmum. Right? Even by a guy, if it's missing an aver, it's possible for his akrava, so therefore it's not considered Avodah Zarah if done to an idol. We discussed different levels of shchutei chutz. We discussed how to determine what's considered noi, what's considered takroivis. And we discussed steering clear of any offering any acknowledgement, honor, respect, payment to Avodah Zarah upon using this type of facility which is associated with the Avodah Zarah. All the best to you and hatzlach.